Hi guys, this episode was shot at the incredible Rev 17 conference where they are raising funds to get a huge piece of property to house trafficked children. There is no more worthy cause than to save these children. Please click on the QR code and donate to Rev 17.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm very, very good. Thank God. I am so peaceful today. It's wonderful to be around people that really, really are fighting the right battle here, because I feel that here. And I have felt this in this church before. So when I first stepped in this church, last year was the first time I felt it here, and that's what I look for, because I'm going to call churches out this year. Look out. I'm coming after some people that need to go. The role of church is very important to me. So
Okay, this is gonna a little tangent on the church topic because you mentioned something. We were having a conversation yesterday, and we're talking about this idea of like 501c's, 508s, the churches that you get, right? And I was making the argument that if you apply to government to get permission, your ceiling is really government. So when COVID happens, they tell you you got to shut your church down, and now you're obeying government. Hence, you're not obeying God.
it's like when Christ was on the cross and he said, "No, forgive them, Father. They do not know." Right? So when you have a pastor who wants to wants to be in a church or goes to a church and gets a job taking over a church, that person is a person that doesn't really know about, his expertise is not, the business end of it, the finance end of it. So he really doesn't know what to look for. And when you go into a church, what you want to look for is, has this church taken any kind of resources from the government? So when you become a C3 or C, there are documents you have to sign for the government. Once you sign those documents, that's it.
You're in contract with the government.
You are signing a contract, whatever that contract might be. Either it could be just like your initials. You have to apply for an entity filing number. Those things are those are documents, those are contracts. You don't need to do that. You can open up a church and worship anywhere you want. You can own the building, you can do whatever you want. It's in the Constitution. It's in the Constitution. That's why people came to this country to be, from tyranny, flying from tyranny, so they don't have to do that anymore. And you can see since the beginning of this country that actually many Protestant denominations came to this country, and they began their own kind of path to their church, their denomination, their type of Christianity, which is funny to me because there's really only one kind of Christianity. Christ, God has never changed. It's the institutions that have, the religious institutions that have changed, and power becomes a problem. Power, money, control. Now that doesn't belong in a church. It's about the people. It's serving. You serve the people, and it's really something that pastors get afraid of. That's I guess my point is, when they go to a church or something, they don't understand that, like, you don't have to do that stuff. You don't have to. You just, it's all about the fear factor, being afraid to not do something, like be different, right? I mean, it's crazy, but that's what happens to people, and they don't know the fact that, the financial end of it, the operational end of it is, and the other thing is, it's not your money. It's not your money. That's what people don't understand. Even C3s that are nonprofits, it's not your money. When people are giving money and donating money, why do people feel that that's their money? Because that's what happens. People lose their mission. They lose the mission. They get their paycheck, and they get gun ho for the mission, but then all of a sudden when money comes in, and it starts to fade, and then they lose the track. Because as a finance compliance auditor, I have gone into an organization. People ask me to do things and kind of evaluate their business, their entity. And the first question I ask is, and I have the executives to the janitor, what's your mission? Just tell me what your mission is. in in just a couple of sentences. And when they can't talk to me, especially the executives, about their mission, and they don't get it, that's the first red flag for me, because they now have lost their mission. They're not working for the mission, and they're not working for the donors who are giving them money. How that's stealing money? That's stealing money. That's how I feel about it.
You said something yesterday that really resonated with me. You had brought up how you are a warrior against what's happening with family law and CPS. And the reason that resonates so much with us is because we've done so many interviews with these horror stories. One of them, I could give you 1,000 horror stories, but let's talk about Jeff Younger. Jeff Younger, I don't know if you've ever heard of Jeff Younger, but he's a gentleman from Texas. His child, when he was 2 years old, the ex-wife decided to transition the child to a female. And then the Texas
Texas or California's.
so it started off in Texas, and then what they did is the judges said in Texas you can't do that. So what she did is she trafficked their child to California, which is a sanctuary state, and now they're changing this 12-year-old boy's name to a female name, and he's about to get castrated. And to me, that's the most horror story of all horror stories, because that's a dad who has no dominion over his children. So tell me about your fascination with really exposing what's happening with family law and CPS.
Well, that's a big. But let me back up. We just won a big case in the Supreme Court that we were on, this Tennessee case, excuse me, and that's a big case. That's all this to stop this mutilation of children. That's going to be a case that we can use for the rest of this country. So that's a milestone of a case. And you can go to americasfuture.net and you can read in our law and policy all about that amicus brief and that case. That's a big case that we just won for the protection of children to stop this stuff. Okay, and so what I think about foster care and child CPS, I had this experience with it because of my own daughter, my middle daughter, who was married to a very, guy that was domestic violence situation and so forth. But he became an informant for the cops. He was still, they caught him stealing, dealing drugs. He had a couple of young girls in the car when they arrested him, and so my daughter was dealing with a lot of stuff. They two little babies, and they he as an informant was allowed the cops let him get his children in family court. She's divorcing him, getting custody of the children. They ordered child support. This is family court, and all of a sudden he loses control of everything. He goes to the cops. They orchestrated a kidnapping of my two grandchildren so he could get the kids. That happened. That was a turning point in my life, because I saw this happen, and they set her up where CPS, he had visitation for the children one weekend. The judge ordered visitation with his mother as a supervisor. She goes back to pick the kids up on Sunday, dropped off on Friday night, picked up on Sunday, and he's not going to allow the kids to come with the mother. All hell breaks loose. The cops called CPS. They orchestrate the cops for her to bring the kids to the cops because they're going to do a wellness check, and they're telling her that she's going to be protected and the children, everything's fine, and they kidnap the kids right in front of us. CPS shows up with the vans. They took both babies. They were 8 months old. Took both babies out of her arms and stole those kids that night. And off they went. She didn't see those kids for 2 weeks. And it was all because he was an informant, and the cops were in on it, with the cops, the CPS, the family court, the judge. I mean, it was like the worst case scenario any family could ever go through, what I went through with my daughter. Not only as a grandmother, that my daughter was on her knees dying because the children were taken out of her hands. The suffering that I witnessed with her, but the suffering of the babies screaming bloody murder because they don't have their mother, and then taken away, and to a woman who was actually, we saw the kids 2 weeks later, and the woman was this little old lady, Jamaican, and the kid. Can you imagine babies being swept up away from their own mother and being thrown into a woman who they can't even speak English? She couldn't even speak English. I mean, it was horrible situation. And the fight began right then. They went after me. They went after my family. They went after my daughter, those children. They wanted the my daughter said to me one day, and I didn't believe her because I didn't know what she was talking about. She said to me, "Mom, they're trying to steal my kids. They're going to take these children. They want these children because they were absolutely beautiful, two little boy girl little babies. They were absolutely beautiful little children." And I said, "No, they're not. No, they're not, Kristen. We're going to be all right. We're going to
I
get."
mean, it's so evil that it just doesn't even resonate.
It was extensive evil. It was incredible evil. And lo and behold, she was right. I mean, the problem that I see for families is that if it wasn't for me advocating and being by her side, she would have lost her mind. She would have committed suicide because her babies were taken. Her ex-husband's got them. She knew he was had problems. It was like everything just changed in a moment because this guy was an informant. And Rhode Island is like the crookedest little state in the whole country. It's a small California. You know what I mean? And I mean, it's communist up there right now. I was just up there. It's like there's people on the streets. There's so much drugs and so much trafficking going on out of all these homeless shelters. It's insane up there. And this is the CPS and the family court system. It's everywhere. And so it was just a fight and a battle for me to get through and to basically save my daughter's life and save my children's life, my grandchildren's life. And I don't know what she would have done. There's many people, women and men. Listen, I met men too. There were men that were married to, going through family court that were married to women who were alcoholics. And the abuser is the first one that calls the hotline, and they help that person because they can get more resources and money for that person.
They intentionally put children with the abusive parent.
Exactly. They get more money. It's all about the money and resources. So, I had, talks with many men that have no rights. In a state like Rhode Island, fathers have no rights. Like there's old laws on the book. That's something that, I always advocate that people do in local action is go look at your policies and your charters and go look at the family court. Go look at these things. You can change things. There's old laws on the books that, fathers need to have rights too. I mean, they don't, but and they intentionally take fathers' rights away from them too. This is a thing that, this society has done. It's to belittled men. They're not important in the family unit. That's a lot. That's BS. Fathers are very important to children's lives, and we need to embrace men and get them back into their kids' lives. We really do. It's sad.
I mean, marriage rates are pretty much non-existent nowadays because the whole Me Too, this whole third wave feminism, I think really has scared a lot of men and women from entering marriage because then really what you're doing is giving dominion to the government. Let's talk a little bit about that part because what I see is we have constitutional law, stems from there's a biblical lineage, and then there's this statutory law, admiralty law, which they use to basically counter. It's like the inversion of God's law. It's like, in my opinion, if I look at the law of what statutory law is, it feels like the introduction of Luciferianism, the inversion of God's word, to do things like this. Because if you look at the Constitution, life, liberty, property, pursuit of happiness, children are theoretically, and I know this probably might not sound great for the woke crowd, but they are property until they're 18.
Right. Right.
I mean, what do you say about the effect of these laws that they put in place, really to introduce tyranny against the people?
Yeah. Well, it started. If people, really think about the founding fathers and they were running from tyranny, right? And they discovered this beautiful land and they researched. They did their due diligence through the intercession of the Lord. This nation was given to us by God, and we have a duty, and we have a mission, and He didn't just give it to us, and there's no attachment. We have an obligation to God to continue to do His work, and that's based on the biblical teachings. It's biblical. It is a Judeo-Christian given to us by God. The covenant is God. This nation belongs to him, like Jerusalem belongs to God. And that's another thing, we got to understand, like we're living in times that are really, really evil, but really cool. This is a good time to be alive. And when they founded this, they put those documents together for a specific reason, but we have an obligation to understand that the law is biblical. The Ten Commandments, if you just abide by the Ten Commandments, you'll live a great life. You won't have to worry about anything in your life if you abide by the Ten Commandments. And I believe that the British were never going to give us our freedom. So when George Washington won the battle, do you think the British were just going to say, okay, you won, we lost?
I love where you're going here. I know where you're going.
Nothing. They were never going to, if you think about the British, they were trying to rule the world. They went into every nation, every country, every people, and tried to control them. You can watch Hollywood movies and watch some of the stories. India, Africa, the islands. Look at how many Canada. Okay, so they were trying to be the world rulers, and they were never going to let America become America under our biblical teachings, under the way they were pissed off that we won and we kicked their butt by 3%. Only 3% stood up and won that war, and we beat them because God gave us that. God gave us that divine intercession, and he did that for us. It had to be. He's in control of everything that's going on, and that's what I believe. I believe that the British were never, ever going to turn over and be the good losers, right? The good losers, the poor loser and a good loser, right? Well, they're never. That's why the Federal Reserve in 1913 came into action. What do you think that was? That was their way of swooping in and having control of the monetary and the gold and all this kind of stuff. Everything that the banking system. It's just amazing to me that people don't understand. The British had their hand in this country, and they planned it. The globalists. And the other thing that's funny to me is, all these people that are the globalists, the CCP, all of them, they're all enemies. They're all enemies. Enemies working with enemies. If you just go study that, you'll know that that's never gonna last. They're gonna kill each other. The Democratic Party is eating themselves alive right now. They can't even deal with each other right now because they're all enemies. They're all enemies. You got Marxism in there. You got communism. You got socialism. You got all these isms, right? They're all fighting with each other. They're all going to blast each other. China, what people don't understand about this country is China gets in here, which they already own land. Look at all the land. I saw a map the other day. It was like all this red. And I'm like, wow, what have we done to allow? So Americans are that greedy to let China come in and give them money and buy up our land? Like, whoa, that blows my mind. You can take money from bad guys, and they're going to be the first ones to shoot you when they come in and take you over. You know what I mean? Like Pelosi and all these people that they're taking money from China. Look at the athletes like LeBron. That's a co-op that China came in and started co-opting athletes to groom them to become communists. We have a lot of communists in this country, So, but you're the first ones you're gone. They're not loyal to anybody. They're criminals.
They're all in it for the money. They're not in it for a purpose. I mean, let me ask you, what do you think about this idea? So people say, okay, we had the revolution, and then we got invaded by the legal societies of England, and this is what our admiralty law is. This is what our case law system is. It's not constitutional because now we're using case law that contradicts the Constitution and leads to a lot of evil calamities. What do you think about that theory?
It's tough. It's really tough because we're seeing that play out right now with the powerful, documents of this separation of powers, which, Trump is trying to do these EOs and executive orders, and turn this progressive liberalism, all this communist to kind of policies that have been created, and they're smart enough for the other side. They've been using the court system for a long time, and what you're saying is exactly right, because and people always say that, like my brother's case, like the persecution of General Flynn, like they tie people up in courts, and that's what they're doing with Trump. Everything he's doing in an EO and is his right as the executor of this country, executor in chief of command. He's the president. He has the right to do this separate. He in fact, the lowest control is the judicial system. They have the less control of all the branches of government. If a case is resolved in the Supreme Court, the president has the right to say, "Okay, good job, but nah, I'm not going to follow it." That those are kinds of things that are going on, and you know, President Trump needs good people around him to fight this stuff. But this is what they do. They have been tying people up. Look at the J6ers. Look at all the pro-life people. Look at all the people that have been used in that system and just lost money, lost their livelihood, lost everything, and then they rip their whole families apart. This stuff is very evil. It's wrong. I mean, it's a system that has been being created over time. I mean, George Soros knew exactly what he was doing when he went in and put DAs in and AGs. AGs hold a lot of power in our country. Look at all the AGs that I mean, my brother's judge, this Sullivan guy, he turned into, being a prosecutor and a judge. He was going to try my brother as a prosecutor when they dropped the case. Like, these judges they're bad. These are bad. These are people that are anti-American. They hate this country, and we have that. I mean, this is where they fought first, was the judicial system. It's what I did when I took America's Future over. That's one of the things that I decided that we better do. And I found a great team of lawyers who are very constitutional, that know the ins and outs of Washington and the corruption. And that's what we did. We started fighting. We have filed over 112 cases, amicus briefs. We've won some big cases, and we don't just hit one certain kind of case. We hit the best ones. The First Amendments, we just won a Second Amendment case out here in California, where they were trying to take people, saying that you couldn't buy only one gun a month. We just won that case. They can buy whatever. Second Amendment right. You can buy whatever you do. Any amount of guns. That's what they were trying to do. They were just trying to tell people that they can only buy one gun a month. That's bullshit. Excuse me.
Mary, I've been seeing you talk at Mar-a-Lago at the America's Future event. I mean, I'm very impressed. You're such a powerhouse, and you come from such an incredible family. Your brothers. I mean, could you tell me a personal question? What defined you growing up? Tell me a little bit about what sculpted you into the person you are. And you have two brothers that are generals. I mean, your parents. Tell me about what was happening there, where you have such an amazing group of people and courageous and brave.
Well, I really have to say that my parents were wonderful people. They were loyal and in love with each other, and they knew that, and they were great friends, and they loved us. They loved having all these children. There 9 kids. My mother and father were just a good We lucked out. We had a good combination of two parents. My mother was a fighter for children. I spoke about that last night, and I really attribute her brilliance and her fight for children in my life, and faith. So somebody, she was always praying when my father was always trying to control, the craziness of us because we were crazy kids. I mean, we were crazy kids. We surfed. We were out surfing 10, 14-foot waves, like nuts, like nutty kids jumping off bridges. Like we were swimmers. We were just kids that were crazy kids. And I don't know how they ever did it. I don't know how they ever did it, my mother and father. But I attribute the fact that I was born between these two. So I had five brothers, and I was the seventh, youngest girl. And I do attribute the fact that these two boys protected me. They watched over me. They were good, good. My father was a good man. He was a gentleman. And they are gentlemen, and they were really good to me. And I attribute my two brothers' um, competitiveness, tenacity. They were two guys that were, the older brother was Michael, General Flynn. He was the guy that was watching out over me, and the younger one was the one I was competing with and driving him nuts. And he's another general. Like I watched them and I learned from them, and they just treated me like a little girl should be treated by their brothers. I mean, they took good care of me, and they were gentlemen, and they were always including me, and I was always able to, you know, keep them from killing each other because they were so competitive, and they were like playing army all the time, and it was like I'd have to call in my father and say, "Dad, just stop it," because it would get like, we're all like intense kids, all of us. We all have this fight in us, and it comes from our parents. It comes from a good combination of faith, family, and freedom, loving this country. And my father was master sergeant, 20 years in the army, so we grew up in a military uh, a military kind of family. Like, we didn't call our mother, "Hey, ma," or "Yeah." When they call us, we have to say, "Yes, ma'am," "No, ma'am," "Yes, sir." My father put that. We had to with 9 kids, otherwise we would have been out of control. I mean, there had to be some kind of a military order to us, and but it was great. There's nothing like the military. I mean, military is amazing. And I don't know, I just contribute a lot. Our parents taught us loyalty too. Like, what is loyalty? Being loyal friend, being a loyal sibling, being a loyal parent, being a loyal person. Loyalty is a big character in the Flynn family. Loyalty, and we will stick by you all the way. I got a sting to me, so if you cross the line with me, I'll I'll my sting is bad because I don't I don't put up with that. I don't put up with, like, don't lie, cheat, and steal. Don't do that to me. If I give you my all, I expect the same. And when it happens, and I've had it happen. I've had it happen a lot with being around my brother. I hadn't seen him in like 35 years because he was away in the military, and when I started working for him, I I know spiritual warfare. He knows warfare. So the soldier doesn't necessarily know spiritual warfare, and regular warfare is different. And I know that I saw people um, around him that were not good in this spiritual thing, putting their hands on him, praying him. I mean, I saw his personality. I saw him, because he's such an intense, good guy that, I think that was a learning curve for us. Is that my mother was a prayer warrior, so I got that young. But I mean, people take advantage of my brother, and I don't want to see that happen. And that's kind of like why they call me the bulldog, pretty much, because I can see it. I can see people that aren't being honest, and they're not being truthful. And we got a lot of that today. We got a lot of infiltration. We got a lot of enemy around us. You know,
I got to ask you about your mom. You were saying that she had 9 kids and she would run around Congress berating congressional members. I love it. It's amazing.
she ran for Senate. She ran for against a senator, big time guy who was in forever, just like we see today. He was a career politician. Oh, my mother was up against senator, she would call them out. Now this is a woman who had 9 children. It was a man's world too. Like there wasn't a lot of women running for office. So my mother was running for office, and she could have run on her educate. Like my mother was highly educated. Like she was no joke. Like she had an economics degree. She was a school teacher. She was, all these things. But she chose the pro-life platform for a reason, because she knew Planned Parenthood. She knew the feminist movement was going to ruin this country, and that's what she was doing. And she was also calling out the Democratic Party, who one time were conservative, pro-life Christians. That was the JFK. My parents were Democrats, and that's what they were. And so that changed. That was changing when she was doing this. They were Catholics going to church, but they were for abortion. Like that's crazy. So she was constantly fighting. She was fighting the churches too, the priests. I remember she used to have a parade, that she would have a right to life parade where she would get all the families and the kids and everything. We'd walk 10 miles around the Ocean Drive, and we raised money for the pro life movement. And we would use one of the churches, and I remember specifically one of the priests that we asked if we could use as a spot. We start there at the walk and use the rectory, and he put us out on the streets. He wouldn't let my mother even use the bathrooms in the church to run this pro life walk. Right to life. It was a walk, and he literally made my mother and her crew outside. Never let them use the church. Now imagine that.
It seems very COVID-like. It seems like there's a cut from the same cloth as some of these, COVID individuals that wanted to shut down the churches and stuff.
So I was in the Catholic Church, working in the Catholic Church, and I saw the Vatican. I used to get directives as a finance director for the Catholic, in Diocese of Providence. I used to get directives, and so I knew the directives were coming from the Vatican, and the directives, I knew something was going to happen, because they were giving us, all of a sudden, they were giving us directives that, what if something happens? What if the churches had to be shut down? What if? And then here's how to handle it. Like they were making us do active shooter training, because there were people shooting churches, right? And they were kind of hyping that up in the Catholic Church. And so we started getting these directives on COVID, and I knew something was going to happen, because the way it was being presented to us. And then lo and behold, the priest came into my office, and the bishop had sent down. COVID pandemic came. We were going to do masks for 2 weeks. We were going to, deal with they had directives how to shut the churches down. It was unbelievable, because this is what they had planned. The Vatican was in on it. The Catholic churches, all the bishops in the United States were in on it, and they closed those churches. I literally had priests go on vacation. They collected $600 a week extra. I had to put my whole staff out on furlough. I fought with them, because I was the only one that kept that office. I said, I'm not leaving. I'm going to stay here, keep this office open, and you can do whatever you want to do. You fire me, all hell will break loose, because they stopped baptizing babies and they stopped anointing the sick. Those are two major sacraments that priests are supposed to do for their people. Well, they stopped doing it. I mean, people were calling up my phone, ringing it off the hook. Catholics, sadly, don't know how to read a Bible. So when they closed the churches, the Catholics went into depression. Many of them went into depression. And they would call, and they would just be, lost, because they didn't know what to do, because they've been going to Mass every Sunday. And that's where they read script, or they hear scripture. Well, I remember having to tell them, just go find a quiet place in your house, pick up the Bible, and start reading it. Catholics have never taught how to just do that. That was sad. I saw that. I mean,
like you are the church.
Yeah, that's when I realized that, wow, what the Catholic teachings has done to the Catholic people is really sad. they've never given them the alternative plan to if a church did get shut down. Like there was no alternative. Like they never gave them another plan. You got to have another plan. I mean, we can say our prayers in our head. We could be enslaved or locked up, and we can still be praying to God in our hands. Yeah, I mean our heads, and that's something that Catholics don't understand. They're lost without the Mass, without going to church every Sunday, and they're participating, and they're not really participating. I mean, there's many Catholics that don't participate. They go because it's like routine, and it's like something they. It's really sad. It's sad. It's sad to see that. But that happens in every church too, because the Protestants did the same thing. The Protestants did the same thing. They closed the churches too.
When you're talking about how the Vatican was sending out these notices about what is to come, I started thinking about your brother's book, Fifth Generation Warfare. It seems like that's part of the fifth generation warfare. They're getting them used to tyranny.
That's right. That's right. That's
Crazy, crazy. I would love to hear what you got coming up with CPS and family law. Yeah.
well, we have. I have. So I'm a builder of teams. Okay, and I've got some teams, and these teams are working on, so I've got a whistleblower program, right? And I worked very close with Tara Rodez and Aaron Stevenson and some other gals and another couple of guys that I actually got to meet a couple of really good whistleblowers out of the IRS too. So, these are important people. These are people that people don't understand in this country that sacrificed everything, that did the right thing. When they saw it, they reported it, and they did the right thing. And so those people are kind of people that I'm hoping that I can. HHS is in big trouble right now. I mean, Bobby's doing the best he can. Honestly, he's really a good guy, and I appreciate what he's doing. But he's got people in the HHS that are that are bad people. There's a lot of built-in bureaucrats that was placed into that department, especially because you got to remember that's the department that was trafficking the children. Okay, that's Mallorca, who should be in jail right now. By the way, the guy should be in jail. And that was such a big budget. There was so much money going in and out of HHS that's where they put a lot of these really bad people. And I think he's up against this kind of stuff going on in that HHS. And I'm hoping, and that's CPS, that's foster care, that's the family court. They got control of that. So there's people that are working. Hopefully, we can grab the foster care, and we can do something to change that, because we really need to break it down. It needs to be gutted. It needs to be, we can. My whole thing as an accountant and a finance person, what you need to do is when you find corruption, you investigate it, you convict it, you indict it, and you prosecute, right? But you got to have an alternative going on at the same time where you build new systems, because we have to now build a new system out of this. And I'm hoping that the church, activating the role of church, the third book my brother did, which we're going to start activating across this country leading into the 2026, into the 250 anniversary, is the role of the church. That's going to be my big thing, and hopefully activating this is going to be a big deal. But I have plenty of teams that are working on foster care and CPS. The problem is there's a lot of infiltrators. There's people that are still sent in to do damage, and they do that. So we got to be careful, and we actually almost have to train people how to look for those people too, because it's just like we train people to look for children that are in distress or being trafficked. We got to do the same thing with people that are infiltrators, that are manipulating people, that are dishonest, but they say they're this, but they're not. And it's there's signs. It's common sense too. It's just that people can be very trusting. And we can't be so Catholics, Christians, all Christians in the time of history were built for battle. We don't have to be so nice. Okay, we've been too nice. And so, as far as foster care, I'd like to see churches take a role. I'd like to see it scrapped the way it is now, but I'd like to see churches and I'd like to see communities take participate in the health of children. I'd like to see more families get involved with taking children. It- you know, we're having a problem with people with young women not wanting children today. There's a lot of children that need good families, good parents, good mother, good father. I mean, we already know that. I mean, it would be ideal to have a mother and father, but there's a lot of people that can do a lot of good to a child. One person can make a difference in a child's life, really.
Last question: is abolishing CPS family courts, is that the ultimate goal? What is, if you could miracle, if you could pull a miracle right now and say this is what's going to solve this issue and rid us of this cancer, what would that be?
Well, a miracle would be, I mean, God can do anything, and that could happen. It could happen. I believe it could happen. Um, I said this last night. The kind of work I do, if one thing is missing or $1 is missing, then you got the whole thing, because that means there's something else there. Okay, and
There's some back door.
there's something, and so that's how I feel that the whole thing would be to gut the whole system. It would be, but you got to prepare for the new system too. You got to be realistic. You know what I mean? And that's why it would be really great that some of these people that are here, you know, are training associated recovery of children. They go around training everybody. They're training more advocates for children, like more people. We need people to become advocates, and I mean advocates for children. That's important. So we're building a system already. It's just that they're not recognized. We've got this. So CPS has a contract with every governor. Every state has a contract. Those contracts can be audited. The system can be audited, and they should be never renewing those contracts. If one child dies, then the whole system, then get rid of them. There should be no contracts being done.
I got to mention this. So we're doing a research on these foster care homes in LA. One of them was shut down. I think they're getting something like $70 million a year from the government. It was shut down because 40 sexual assaults on children. Like, it's just crazy. I mean,
That's right. And so why has that been happening? Every year there's a contract. Why is a governor, a Democrat or Republican, why is it that they are allowing one death in their system? Why is that? I mean, it's not okay to have a child die in CPS custody. No, that should never happen. But I mean, it's these stories. What you're talking about, there's stories like that all over the country. So so this has been going on for decades. This is a build up. I think that the Lord is actually just exposing this. And I think that he's had enough of the death. And I really believe that he's had enough of the death. The death has We've done too much. We've killed too many children. We're at the lowest level of birth rate in the history of mankind right now. Every nation does not have enough children being born. That's disturbing. And that's disturbing.
and it's family law and CPS that scares the crap out of people.
That's right. That's exactly right. Because the government wants control of your children. And if you don't understand that that's right in front of everybody's eyes. I mean, we've lived in decades of this stuff. There's plenty of examples of this all over the country. I mean, people know in their community where kids are and family and divorces, who's got custody of kids. They all know this. So it's going on for decades. It's a buildup of, you know, where we are now. It's been going on forever. I mean, it's sad because it's just been there's so much death. There's just so much death, you know. And like my mother's been fighting, years and decades ago for babies. Look how many babies we've killed since that time. There's been just generations after generations of children that we've killed. And we all have a part in it too, by the way. Even if you don't believe in that, we still have a part in that. We're all humans. We all have to take responsibility for what we've done.
You're saying governor, by power of the pen, could abolish CBS.
Yes, they can renew or sign contracts. That they have a contract, and it is up in front of the governor's office every year. Whenever that contract is coming to an end, they have to renew that. Oh yeah, this
They
is
have to, or do they have the choice to say, you know what, there's so many crazy things?
they have to renew it. I'm just saying to make it work, to do it, they have to renew it. And that's what they've been doing. They've been renewing contracts, CPS contracts, because it's a part of an agency. It's an agency, a part of our government. It's not our government, but it is a part of our government. It's an agency, right? Yes, they could. What governors don't stand up for that? I mean, who allows that to happen? One child. And by the way, they have immunity. That's another whole issue.
That is so unconstitutional. Nobody on the planet should have immunity.
No question.
I mean, that whoever's saying, the judge that says that person has immunity should no longer be a judge, in my opinion.
It's gotten so out of control with this immunity stuff. I mean, that's been going on in CPS forever. Is this immunity thing? I mean, I witnessed that when I was going through that stuff with my own children. I witnessed a CPS, a woman who was in the case, who actually I was sitting in a chair and she actually attacked me. She wanted to provoke me to hit her. Okay, this is how dirty these people are. And I calmly sat there, but she had total immunity. I actually went to the police and reported it, and they told me that there was nothing I could do. Okay, I mean that's the power of what they've given these people. They've given, and by the way, CPS has the power to for the to give a report to a judge that will determine who gets that child. And they use ad litems attorneys who are corrupt. Listen, there's only a few of them that are very good. There's a lot of corruption in them. And they determine. So the judge that's sitting on the bench in the family court system, which is a joke. It's a joke. It came from England. The family court system is a moat. It's a terrible court. It's terrible. It's a joke. They don't even do their job anymore. They don't even do their job. Now, you think a family court judge would talk to a governor about CPS? If they know how many deaths are coming, CPS, they know all about it. The judges know all about it. Why aren't they reporting to the governor? Why aren't they talking to the governors and telling them, like, no, we got a problem here? Because they don't care. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about children. Nobody cares about children. That's
You
where
know
we
what I
are.
think needs to happen, as traumatic as this would be for the American population? All those Epstein videos need to go online, all of them. And I know it's going to be horror. And then I think what happens is when people see that, all of a sudden they start caring about the children because it's too far from their thought. Unless you show it to them, like we talk about these things, genocides and Holocaust. Until you see the genocide or Holocaust movie, you don't really appreciate what that looks like.
Or it hits you right in the face in your own home too. I mean, people have to feel it. You have to feel the pain, right? That's what I did. I felt the pain. But the Epstein stuff, all this stuff. Well, okay. Let me just give you an example. You're right. Absolutely, it should all be let loose on. Let the public see everything, right? But the pro-life movement did that back in the day. They couldn't get anybody to understand what abortion was doing, and what they did was good enough for the National Right to Life movement. If you remember, they started showing the baby parts. Okay, that changed everything. That was a game changer.
Bring one up. Remember the Truth campaign of the '90s, which was about cigarettes? They started showing like people with like with these electronic voices, and
That's right. That's right. And that's what the gory part of it needs to be. It does need to be shown. And this Epstein stuff and the Diddy stuff, all of it needs to come all out, and the public needs to understand, and they need to know who it is and what they've been doing. It needs to be transparent. Transparency. And it's going to come. Believe me, I know the Lord's going to do it. I know. It's just a matter of, you know, it's just a matter of like we need law enforcement to get trained. We need leaders to be trained. We need corporate business people to be trained. They need to be trained on this stuff because they don't know. Like I said last night, the law enforcement's about 6 years behind criminals, and criminals are infiltrating all the time. They're here. They're probably listening to some of the stuff that some of these guys are doing because they have to know what the good guys are doing so they can beat us. They got to know. They got to stay one step ahead of us so they can do their criminal behavior. So they can steal kids and do whatever they do. That's the way criminals are. They're constantly trying to find out what we're doing. The technology, the AI, the technology is blowing people's minds. AI is extremely dangerous, but it has a good side. But it's very dangerous to families right now. It's extremely damaging to families right now because the AI is being used. Kids are sending pictures of themselves. They can manipulate a picture that makes it look like a girl who's dressed is naked. You know what I mean? Like they can manipulate things and then they can sell the images. They can put two people standing together, two kids, and they can make them look like they're in an act. You know what I'm saying? Like it's very very serious, and then they sell them, and then your pictures everywhere, and the dark web needs to be shut down. It's just unbelievable that is allowed.
Every single person that downloads anything like that should be immediately arrested, thrown in jail. They're like a menace to the public.
Absolutely, absolutely.
This is amazing, Mary. Thank you so much. It's amazing to have such a warrior. I mean, the whole family lost CPS thing is so close to our heart because we've heard so many horror stories. And thank you so much for the incredible work you're doing.
Thanks for reporting it. Keep reporting it because they need their voices. They need to hear their people need to hear their voices. They're out there too. So keep doing it.
Thank you so much, viewers, and I'll see you all on the next episode. Thank you.